Welcome Wastelanders to another Fallout 76 build, this time the Cultist. This build is a melee character with a haunting aesthetic. In this video I'll do a breakdown of what you need to make this build work, provide suggestions to maximise its effectiveness, and even provide a character backstory for any of you who really enjoy that aspect. If you want to skip ahead to any section, then there will be timestamps in the description below. The minimum special for this build is 7 strength, 2 perception, 1 endurance, 4 charisma, 1 intelligence, 7 agility, and 3 luck. These are pretty low requirements for the most part, which means you will have plenty of spare special points to work with. Strength and agility are by far the most important stats, so they're the ones you'll likely want to increase further. If you play heavily with that, then you may also want to consider raising luck in order to build up criticals faster. For perks with this build, we start off with Strength, where we have Gladiator, Expert Gladiator, and Master Gladiator. With just 7 Strength, you can make it so these perks raise your one-handed melee damage by 50%. If you raise Strength by a couple more points, you can max all these cards out and gain 60% extra damage. The higher the damage, the better, so these perks will be a priority. In Perception, I have included the Night Eyes perk, which provides night vision while sneaking during nighttime hours. I'm classing this as an optional perk, as the visual effect of this might not be something you're a fan of. Although it does help with nighttime stealth, it does give an unusual filter, not only upping the brightness but also creating a blur around the edges of the screen, and also blinding brightness when walking up to bathtubs. Alright, we've been talking about the basics of the character so far, but not really the theme of it. Let's switch that around by talking about our endurance perk, Cannibal. With this perk card you can eat human, ghoul, super mutant, scorched, and mole miner corpses. Doing so restores both health and hunger at the cost of taking radiation damage. If you are particularly concerned about the rads you take from this, you could invest in the lead belly perk, but do keep in mind this would require you to invest more points in endurance, which isn't something I see as a priority for stealth builds in general. The key part to this perk really is just setting the mood of the character. What's the point of playing a build called the Cultist if you're not going to get into the creepy side of it? In Charisma, I've decided to throw in the maxed out Lone Wanderer perk. Now, obvious part first, if you're playing in a team, then do not equip this perk. Use something else instead that's more team focused like Inspirational or Team Medic. I personally tend to play stealth builds solo. It's a good playstyle for anyone playing without a team, as it's slow paced but deadly. The Lone Wanderer perk cards will provide you with a 30% AP regen and make it so you take 20% less damage. This perk both helps heavily with action point management and with the rare occasions you end up actually taking any damage. For intelligence, I only had it set at a base of 1 point, so I decided to keep things simple here. A single rank of Makeshift Warrior will make your melee weapons break 10% slower, reducing how often they need to be repaired. Speaking of repairing, do keep in mind that when you go to repair your equipment, you should equip the Fix It Good and Weapon Artisan perks in order to get over 100% condition with your weapons and armour. Onto Agility, where we have a trio of incredibly helpful perks: Sneak, Ninja, and Escape Artist. All of these at their maximum ranks. Altogether, these will make you 75% harder to detect while sneaking, give 3 times damage with melee sneak attacks, and make it so that you can move at full speed whilst crouched without it negatively impacting your stealth. I cannot stress enough how important these perks are. Without investing into the stealth perks, you won't be able to play a stealth melee build. Finally, we move on to Luck, where I have the maxed out rank of Bloody Mess. Not only is the extra 15% damage highly helpful for combat, but the enemies exploding into gory red chunks is more than fitting for a psychotic build like this one. As weapon choices for this character, I've included both the Cultist Dagger and Cultist Blade. Keep your eyes out for legendary variants of course, as the right legendaries will greatly increase the overall power. I personally had the instigating effect on my dagger, making it ideal for sneak attacks, and both faster swing speed and the bloodied effect on the sword, making it more fitting for open combat. I have also run across a serrated Cultist Dagger, which appears to be a higher damage variant of the Cultist Dagger, so keep an eye out for that on your adventures. As with all my builds, the key bits of our armour are going to be the aesthetic pieces. For this build, it will be the Ritual Bindings and Mask. If you're after these items, then Genesis made a neat little guide to help you easily obtain both items. I'll leave a link to that in both the description and the cards section in the top right of the screen. As for actual armour pieces, you'll likely just be going for whichever legendaries you can get. Effects you will want to keep an eye out for though are Chameleon, extra strength for agility, and the bonus stealth effect if you get really lucky, that is. Essentially what you're looking for here are ways to either increase your stealth or your melee damage. Actual armor rating isn't all that important, as you shouldn't be taking damage very often, so instead the legendary effects take priority. With mutations, there's a few different ones that fit the build quite well. Adrenal Reaction and Twisted Muscles both will increase your melee damage, whilst only giving you negatives that have a very minor impact on the character. Twisted Muscles is the safer one, only reducing gun accuracy. However, Adrenal Reaction is the more interesting mutation to get. This mutation increases your weapon damage at low health, whilst also knocking 50 HP off your maximum hit points. This makes you more of a glass cannon. You can't take as many hits, but as long as you're staying hidden, this shouldn't be a problem. There are plenty of other mutations which could also come in handy with this build. Carnivore would fit with the Cannibal perk, Chameleon can potentially enhance stealth further, and even stuff like Grounded or Healing Factor could potentially work with this build. As is always the case, feel free to play around with mutations until you get a combination that you're happy with. The playstyle for this character is pretty straightforward. You're stealth melee, so you want to stay crouched, sneak up behind an enemy and stab them with your dagger or slash at them with your sword. This is a pretty easy concept to wrap your head around, and in terms of implementing it, that's fairly easy too. In the early levels you might struggle with getting up close to the enemy without getting detected, but once you've raised agility and started investing in the sneak skills, things will turn around. In fact, things get ridiculously easy after a while. I mean, seriously, look at this. Stealth in this game can be ridiculous. The information in this build serves as a rough guide on how to make a basic stealth melee build without too many bells and whistles, but even without added flair, it's kinda OP. Stealth melee is a really strong playstyle, which makes the majority of fights completely one-sided. If you do need some tips, then there's pretty easy rules to stick to. Try to stay out of line of sight, stick to shadows, and pick off stragglers instead of going after groups. If you try to take on a close-knit group of enemies all at once, then there's a good chance your stealth will be broken. However, if you pick them off one at a time, then you will find yourself having a much easier circumstance. Worst comes to worst and you get detected. You then have two choices, either fight or flee. To know which is the better choice, you'll need to assess the situation. If there's only a very small number of enemies around who can be taken down in a few swings of your sword, then fight. If you're heavily outnumbered, then run away, break line of sight and crouch back down until you return to hidden. Working out which method is the best choice is often quite obvious, but there will be times when you're not certain what to do. As long as you're able to think on your feet though, you should be fine. The Cultist was born and raised inside of Vault 76. Her life was safe, comfortable, and incredibly boring. Nothing interesting ever happened inside of the vault. Every day she woke up, went to classes, ate her lunch, tidied her room, went to bed. It was all so repetitive and boring. For the best part of 2 decades she would have to endure this, and it made her life feel like a living purgatory. Worst of all was having to go through puberty within the confines of a metal structure. Trying to engage in self-expression or just adapt to changes wasn't possible when there were a couple of hundred adults in the same building as you. Privacy was rare to come by, and it's not like there were all that many people around her own age. The adults always talked about the outside world, what it was like pre-war, how it might have changed, and what they should do when they leave the vault. Orders were to rebuild America, but for her that meant nothing. She only knew about stories of America. For her it was nothing more than a fairy tale that the adults kept repeating to themselves. All of it had started to drive her mad. She heard the adults' voices in her head repeating the same phrases over and over and over again. When she was finally free of the vault, she knew that she had to get as far away from the other vault dwellers as possible. She fled far away, glad for the chance to feel freedom at long last. On her travels through the world she would come across many strange sights. Sloths twice her size, statues made out of flesh and bone, and even the mythical Mothman itself. Seeing all of this with her own eyes makes her realise that there are greater powers in the world than humanity. Whilst her own race cowered underground, these creatures thrived on the surface. She had seen the bodies littering the land. The human race was doomed, and it was time for the next species to take over. Thank you all for watching this latest build. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like on the video, and consider subscribing to the channel so you can easily find more character builds like this one. As well as Fallout 76 builds, I've previously made builds in Skyrim and Fallout 4, plus I'll likely be making builds for future games too. As always, I want to thank you very much for watching. Sarge out.